The Soviet Union, Communism, and the United States. Introduction to Communism. What is communism? Well, communism by definition is a type of government as well as an economic system, a way of creating and sharing wealth. In a communist system, individual people do not own land, factories, or machinery. Instead, the government or the whole community owns these things. Everyone is supposed to share the wealth that they create. This economic theory was expanded upon by Karl Marx, considered to be the father of communism. This idea of communism is, however, impossible and is an unrealistic worldview which does not take into account greed, corruption, or just plain and simple human nature. Part 1. The Soviet Union and the domino effect. The idea and premise behind the domino effect is that powerful communist countries like the USSR and China would take over neighboring countries who were not communist, and that if no action was taken by powerful capitalist countries like the United States, the communist militaries would rapidly seize military control across many different countries throughout the world. The central idea is that if one country fell to communism, this would ignite a communist uprising, and many other countries would fall as well. For example, if Vietnam falls to the communists, then Cambodia will, then Laos, then Thailand, etc. This meant Americans believed communism must be opposed at all costs. The impact of communism to and in the U.S. In the United States, communism was seen as a threat to American life. The Red Scare in the 1960s was a reflection of the enmity of Americans towards communists. The Red Scare is best described as widespread, hysterical fear held by Americans. This is what led to McCarthyism, when Joseph McCarthy, a state senator, called out supposed communist members infiltrating the U.S. and put them on trial. As it turned out, however, most of the accused were not affiliated with communism whatsoever. This exemplifies the hysteria. Part 2. The Vietnam War. In 1965, in order to halt the spread of communism in Asia, the United States military entered Vietnam, a country which was enduring through a civil war. The U.S. sided with the southern Vietnamese and fought against the Viet Cong, the military of the northern communist Vietnamese. Although this war was initially supported by the U.S. population, the Watergate scandal, economic stresses, and reported war crimes committed by the United States military would soon alter the public support once held by the American people for the war. Pictured here are soldiers on the United States side on the offensive, attempting to subdue an infantry division of the Viet Cong. The impact of the Vietnam War in and on the United States. The Vietnam War, in effect, strained the U.S. economy heavily. In order to fight the spread of communism, public support for the war in America, after around 8 years of ongoing conflict, was severely hindered, and ultimately, the Vietnam War created a surge of distrust towards the government and military. With this distrust and social unrest, the United States military removed itself from Vietnam, and due to the spread of communism throughout Vietnam, concerns about the spread of communism in America only increased, and what followed would be the height of the Cold War, particularly during the 1980s. Quick facts about the Vietnam War. Number 1. The United States spent over $350 billion supporting the war. Number 2. 2 million people would die because of the war. Number 3. The U.S. military dumped about 8 million tons of bombs within Vietnam, as well as around 20 million gallons of herbicides, which caused many to have diseases or birth defects for their children later in life. Number 4. The Vietnam War ended in 1975. Part 3. Soviet versus American propaganda. The propaganda employed by both of these countries involved selective truths. American propaganda often involved painting the communist as evil and Russian, as well as discussions about the freedom that is afforded in the United States. Soviet propaganda involved mainly preventing people from being educated about daily life in the West and how too much money and accumulation of wealth would drive people insane. Attached are some links.